Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Welcome to the February meeting of the South Central Pennsylvania Genealogical Society. My name is Jonathan Stair, and I'm the president. I'm glad to see all of you here today. I'm excited because I know we're going to have a great presentation coming up. And also, as I was leaving church this morning, I told my wife, boy, this is really nice. I said, if winter were like this all the time, I could handle winter. So it's a very nice day out there. Is anybody here for the first time, never been with us before? Great. Would you want to give us your name, tell us where you're from and what you're researching? Okay, go ahead.
My name is Barony Banks. Where I live, I was raised here. I do a lot in the community. I'm not really researching anything at the moment, but I'm just trying to what my mind together and all that.
Great. Okay, anybody else? Go ahead.
My name is Demita Wilson. I'm a recent board member of Friends of Lebanon Cemetery. I have frequented the Europe History Center because my great-great-grandfather was John Aquila Wilson, who was in the Civil War.
Thank you. Thank you for your work. In the back here. Go ahead. I saw some hands back there.
My name is Pat Steinberg. I'm a board member of the Northeast Neighborhood Association. I've just always heard a lot about Samantha Dorn, and I never heard her talk before, and I thought, how many
There you go. Yes, sir.
Archie Calmore, and I'm a former history teacher. And likewise, I would like to echo what the young lady said. I would like to see Ms. Dorn speak.
Yes. I saw another hand. Go ahead.
Pat Shell, I'm a member of the Friends of the History Center, but not this. Never been to this, but I would like to do some research on my husband's family.
Great. What's the surname? What's the surname you get research?
Shell,
Shell. Okay.
and it's supposed that his family has Native Americans back in, a couple of generations.
Okay.
I'd like to find that.
Is it SCH or SE?
SCH.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I've been here before.
Yeah.
Jonathan's looking at me,
No, just.
but it's been years.
Okay, can I ask Richard Robinstein to read the minutes from our January 7th meeting?
Jonathan began January 7th program. Here, again, he asked the same number, whether there were any new attendees. There was one new attendee that meeting. I read the minute, the program notes were reviewed and approved. Notes are filed for future reference, one being the hard copy, one being Google Drive. The November-December 2023 Treasury report was given by Richard Kunkel, standing in for Margaret Burke, the treasurer. Beginning cash balance on October 31st was $16,884.55. The cash balance at the end of December 31st was $16,321.27. The number month of December membership stood at 148.5 renewals last month, 2 for 2 years and 9 new members. Nicole Smith highlighted upcoming events for the Brooke County History Center and activities for the month of January, ongoing for the month of January. The meeting hall will be open for programs until the move. There will be 2 computer stations available in the back, beginning at 1 p.m. prior to our meeting here. This session is being recorded by you on YouTube as well as broadcast on Zoom and Facebook. Jonathan Stayer extended his thanks to Margaret and Tom for helping to clean up the files in preparation of moving. Stated the PH archives are now open. Some of what is being reported tonight the law, he spoke about Jonathan spoke about the lawsuit that is involving the state archives. Some of which that is being reported is not accurate. The lawsuit is not about ownership of records in the state archives. A genealogist from New York is suing the state archives over digitized records, stating that the records should be free for the public. These records are free by going on the web or going to the archives in person. The issue is that Ancestry scanned these records along with indexing them. It is then proprietary to them digitally. There is more to this issue of what is being stated online. Another thing, Steve Beck, remember here, is developed map of all cemeteries in Merck County. He's asking for any help in this project. There are 5 things he's asking for assistance with to identify any cemeteries that have been missed. He would like to include a photograph of every cemetery, any interest, unique narrative about each of the people or burial sites, hyperlinks to other websites that may provide additional information on individual sites or the entire county. Narrative pertaining to the general history of cemeteries, burial plots and grounds, and memorial gardens in North County. The History Center will be moving in February, March. After that, it's been stated later in March now. It is the intent that we will assist in moving any way as possible. In the last Saturday, March 23rd, on the last Saturday, March 23rd, 2024, our organization, the Central Pennsylvania Genealogy Society and History Center, will be holding a genealogy workshop comically titled Funny Slipper Genealogy. Things that you can do in your bunny slippers at home is using deeds online and family history research will be done taught by Lynn Nelson. Probate records and how to find them online with your uncle. Cool and clever census hacks, Lynn Nelson. Sign up and registration will be on the York County History website. Richard Kump will give you a list of upcoming events. And just a reminder that June's meeting will be held the second Sunday of June, the second Sunday of the month, 71st.
Thank you. Margaret?
Thank you. Okay, the treasurer's report. Balance at December 31st, 2023 was $16,321.27. Receipts for the month of January came all through PayPal. We had a membership of $35, research of $75, donation of $40, and a publication sale of $21. The total was $172.69. PayPal fees are $6.08 on that amount. So our net receipts for January was $166.61. Disbursement was a bank debit for a return check of $75, which was my fault. I didn't pay attention to the date on the check, and unfortunately the bank account had been closed, but it's already been taken care of and we've gotten the money back, so we're okay. So our net cash balance of January 31st was is $16,562.88. The membership, we have one new member, 149 now. And oh, that's it. That was all, no renewals this month. Okay, that's it.
Nicole?
Hello, everyone. Thank you all for coming out today. My name is Nicole Smith. I'm the director of the library and archives here at the History Center. Just a couple announcements before we move on to the program. Again, this program is being recorded and will be available on the York County History Center YouTube channel. We are closed at present, but expect to see us open. We'll be opening for the History Center membership at the end of June in our new building. And then at the beginning of July to the general public. So very exciting, very busy time. Well, we will continue to hold programs like this one right here in the meeting hall until the new building is open. Please visit the yorkhistorycenter.org website for more updates and information on programs coming up. Our second Saturday speaker is Mark Dubin, speaking about Colonel Thomas Hartley's regiment at Yorktown. On February 15th, we have Nisi DeShields Moulton, who is with us today. I'm sure I butchered your name terribly, but there she is. This is a genealogy program, so I hope you can make it. The program is entitled Veiled Chapters of Hampton Plantation Legacy. So please check that out. On February 21st, our Civil War Roundtable speaker is Cody Esch, speaking about Frederick Douglass's speech at Gettysburg. And our next all-vet speaker on February 28th is Ray Brown, who was in the Army in Iraq. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Before I turn the podium over to Richard to introduce our speaker, I wanted to just note the accomplishments of one of our members. Lynn Nelson had an article published in the very prestigious National Genealogical Society Quarterly. It's entitled, "Was Leonard Baumgartner of York, Pennsylvania, the father of Anna Maria Mary Worley Myers, using conflict resolution to establish identity?" So the History Center gets this, and you can pick it up various other places. I thought the article was very well done, and if you are having a problem finding people, particularly in York County in the 19th century, she just points you to all kinds of sources to use, and it's a great resource. I just want to congratulate Lynn on getting published in this. And I do want to remind everybody that that's actually the fourth Saturday, not the last Saturday, because I think March has 5 Saturdays. Did we figure that out last time? Anyway, March 23rd, Saturday, March 23rd, is our genealogy seminar entitled Bunny Slipper Genealogy. And that will be held in this room from 9 to 12:30. Richard read the various sessions that are going to be offered. And if you want to participate in that, registration will be handled by the York County History Center. And there will be a couple of us who are actually going to be helping with that. And our speakers will be Richard Kunkel and Lynn Nelson, whom we just met. Is there any other news that people would like to share with the group before Richard comes? Okay, Richard Kunkel's going to come, tell us about upcoming programs, and introduce the speaker.
Good afternoon. So my name is Richard Kunkel. I'm the vice president of this organization. Before I introduce today's speaker, I'll tell you about the rest of the programs for this part year that we use up through the end of June. So next month on March the 3rd, our speaker will be Lisa Wolfson, and the title of her program will be How to Find the Needle in a Haystack When You're Not Even Looking. And it addresses some Quaker ancestors that she has, who were very early settlers who came over with William Penn. So that should be an interesting program, a little different than things that we usually have. Then on Sunday, April the 7th, that'd be the week after Easter, we have Aaron McWilliams, who is an archivist at the Pennsylvania State Archives, and his presentation will be Research at the New Pennsylvania State Archives Building. So if you're thinking about going up to Harrisburg to research at the new archives building, this might be a good thing to listen to before you go and give you a good idea about what to expect. I understand Jonathan's been there. I don't think too many of us have been otherwise, but it'll give you a good idea of things that are available. There's a lot available there. Our May meeting will be off-site. That will be the first Sunday in May, and that will be at the Basilica of the Sacred Heart, also known as Conowalga Chapel in Irishtown, which is near McSherrystown in Adams County, Pennsylvania. The time's a little different as well. It's at 2 p.m. on site with the priest who is it's a Roman Catholic church. It's a minor basilica of the Roman Catholic Church, and it's probably the oldest Catholic church in this area. Probably said it before, if you haven't had the opportunity to travel in Germany, Austria, or Italy to see Baroque Catholic churches, this is your opportunity to see something very like that. Everything's frescoed, and they've discovered more frescoes that were on the walls. The walls were just white, and apparently they're all covered in frescoes that they've uncovered. And so they've done a lot of restoration work here recently, but it's a very historic place. The stone building dates back to about 1785. And most of the decoration inside, though, is 19th century. And the Jesuits were the order that started Conowalga Chapel. And then we have our Henry James Young Award, which will be held on the second Sunday, as was said, and that will presumably be here, the second Sunday of June. So if you can join us for any of those programs, you're certainly welcome to do so, and I think they would be quite interesting. Now, our speaker for today is Samantha Dorn. I'll put this right out there. Samantha and I graduated from high school with Samantha, so she looks a lot better than I do, though. So from about 6th grade to 12th grade, we were pretty much all the same classes between Hannah Penn and William Penn. And I won't tell what year we graduated. You can guess. Samantha is a senior grant consultant for over 20 years experience and instrumental in providing grant writing guidance to various public safety and nonprofit agencies. However, in her spare time, she's gotten very interested in history here recently, and especially through the Friends of Lebanon Cemetery, which is a nonprofit organization dedicated to the promotion of African American cemeteries in York County. By honoring the memory of those interred at those cemeteries through historic research, documentation, education, preservation, restoration, and community engagement. She's an active member and participant in the Pennsylvania Hallowed Grounds Network, the Black Cemetery Network, consults with the National Cemetery Administration to promote the care of African American veterans in private cemeteries. Ms. Dorn is an active contributor to the Veterans Legacy Program, highlighting the untold accomplishment of veterans. And some of her work has been featured on the local PBS station WITF, CBS Sunday Morning with Martha Teichner, USA Today, and a novel by Neil King Jr., former Wall Street Journal writer, and a CNN article by Elliot McLaughlin. If you could please help me in welcoming Samantha Dorn, whose presentation today is entitled Tracking the Migration of Black Families.
Get them set up here. Get the mic and everything ready. Notice Richard did say that we've known each other since 6th grade. His passion for history, he's had all of that time. This is still new to me. I'm a math science person. I'm a numbers person. So I've only been involved with or tracking history or tracking my family just since about 2019. So I'm really looking for today to be more of a conversation than a presentation. So I have some slides to kind of guide along the way. Baronita introduced herself as far as being a new individual here and a cousin. If you did not know, Windsor, Maryhill, Allander, Pahosky, Winton. That's where a significant number of our Smallwood family is located in North Carolina. That's on my mother's side. So First up. We have this working. Do I need to-
It's counterintuitive, it's down, I think, or, yeah.
There you go.
you. So always just the disclaimer first, the views and opinions expressed in the program are those of the speaker and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any entities that they represent. Are you guys able to hear me okay in the back there? Excellent. So some things to think about as we go through this, as far as for your own research, as well as what we are looking at here with the migration of Black families. What resources do you use for your research? What type of challenges are you encountering? And then more importantly, if you can share techniques that you have found to be successful when doing research. Now, I didn't have a chance to check and see, but today, ABC 27 was to be airing a segment about United States colored truth at Lebanon Cemetery, based on a book written by Becky Vanstein. I know you're like, did I do that? So their book out there with ABC 27, and there'll probably be multiple segments throughout the month about some of the individuals in that book. The book is available here through the History Center, and it's also available out on Amazon. So, you know, we want to thank Becky, and I personally want to thank Becky because I've learned so much about my family through her helping to lead the way as far as some tips and tricks and finding people, as well as Nisi and now working with Demita. When Richard called me, I guess probably back in December, he just said, well, Sam, are you looking over here? Gave me some extra things to go through. So apparently sleep is overrated. Because I've been trying to listen to all of them and you know, follow along with what we're looking at. So part of this, I always try to get people to manage expectations when you're talking about Black families. You're going to hear me say Black, you're going to hear me say Negro, you're going to hear me say color. There's going to be any number of things, African American, and those terms are actually all very important to this research, and we'll talk a little bit about why. But as far as managing expectations, are you trying to just find out the road that the family traveled? How did you get to where you are today, or where have other family members landed? Where are they? So are you looking to research the people, places, maybe customs or traditions, as well as accomplishments? And then there's this other side, usually involving DNA, where now you're going to talk about family connections, or maybe even medical concerns. The presentation today is not heavy on DNA. I personally have not had my DNA done, but so everything that I've been doing is on paper, and then working with a number of cousins who have had DNA. So all of that comes together. So it really comes down to, what are you looking for? And that's going to sort of determine what's the best route that you're going to take to get conclusive information. Okay. Keywords, very important. So part of the challenge of tracking Black families comes in knowing terminology that's been used in different parts of the country and during different periods. The attached here, this is from North Carolina, where I was just saying where some of my family is, and this was printed just 4 years apart. Same editor, S.F. Lewis. S.F. Lewis is actually a family member of mine. His mother was an outlaw, my great-grandmother's sister. So you have here, this is one portion of the newspaper. They had either the colored news or the Negro news. The reason that's important, if you are researching in 1943 and you put in a name for the term Negro, you might not get a hit because the terminology was colored, and vice versa for this particular area. So just because you put in S.F. Lewis Negro in 1943, if you don't get anything, doesn't mean it's not there. You got to change your term. So it's like you're doing double, sometimes triple the amount of research because you have to keep changing your keywords. Okay. Up next, navigating name changes. When you're talking about families and you're talking about migration, you've got both forced migration, slavery, and then you have that voluntary migration of people being able to move freely. For my family out of Westminster, Maryland, when we talk about name changes, sometimes just trying to figure out, like, was the census worker lazy, illiterate? Was the name different? Did the name change at any time? For some, many families, Black families, once you cross the Mason-Dixon line prior to emancipation, your name changed because oftentimes slave catchers are looking for you. So just, again, the complexity of trying to track families when you have name changes. So for the name Dorn, out of Westminster, Maryland, I can see anything from Durham, Dorsey, Dorme, or Dorn. But oftentimes the first name is the same, address is the same, the birth dates are the same. And so even here, the marker was just put in at Ellsworth Cemetery about 2 years ago. So the obituary says Dorsey, but his military record said Durham, so they have to go by the military records. But it is the same person. The date of death is the same, August 1st, 1966. All the other records were the same. So this is the correct person. And he was the nephew of my great-great-grandfather. So with my great-great-grandfather, Singleton Dorn, all of his siblings are listed as Dorsey. He's listed as Dorn. Were they half siblings or was it a typo? You know, these are the types of questions that we run into. But their mother's name was listed as Dorn. So I'm still trying to figure out, well, then who exactly was his father? This was one of the many things that I grabbed Becky on, like, I'm confused. You guys, you're welcome to ask questions anytime. So I'm fine with that. Give you another idea, common names. I'm sure this is not just unique to the Black community. It's kind of interesting now that people name their kids things like Apple, because at least later you'll be able to find them. Because it's unique, right? Boy, I hope that doesn't come back. But so with our family names, we have here, this is my 2 times great-grandfather, Samuel D. Outlaw, and his son, Samuel Jr. in Berkeley County, North Carolina. Now, Samuel Jr., 1901 to 1994, he was a blacksmith, and there is a blacksmith museum in Onancock, Virginia for Samuel D. Outlaw Jr., named for his father, Samuel. Now, I know now, didn't know before, that Samuel Sr.'s name, father's name was Alfred, and that's really important. Okay, so hang on to that, we have Alfred. But out in Haywood, Tennessee, there's this headstone that says Sam Outlaw, 1868 to 1937. This Sam Outlaw died in 1935, born in 1855. So again, very confusing. Do we have the right people? Are we looking at the correct line? And so just really encouraging people that as you're doing your research, probably going to have lots of notebooks, lots of tabs open on the computer, listing names, make sure you put in the dates, put in the locations, parents or siblings, so that you can try and figure out, are these the correct individuals, as well as any names that you might find on a census record. That could be neighbors, it could be borders, or just to see, you know, what you're coming up with, to see if there's some commonality there. So let's talk a little bit here. This is Samuel Outlaw in North Carolina. Now, because I knew a little bit about him for the search, I could put in more criteria to get to the right person. So this Samuel Outlaw knew his dad's name was Alfred, knew the mother's name was Lucy, knew the daughter, my great-grandmother, was Serena, And that his wife's name was Margaret Gaskins. So hang on to that Gaskins name, Gaskins. Okay, so this is in North Carolina. And then I have his death certificate, and that's again showing who his parents are, right? So this is Samuel Outlaw in North Carolina. And I did a record here where we're now talking about Haywood, Tennessee. Samuel Outlaw. But I'm looking at the dates and it says, what year born? 1804 maybe? 1840. What's going on here? But as you look down, you see he has a son named Sam. So if you have Samuel. So what happens is you have in North Carolina, father, Samuel, two of his sons, one Alfred, one Samuel. I come from the line of Samuel. Through that forced migration, because you see at the bottom here, I put slave owner, we're going to get to that in just a moment. Through that forced migration called slavery, Samuel the son is taken to Tennessee. Alfred remains in North Carolina. So you have on these two lines with ages very close to each other. One line is Samuel. The other line is Samuel, Alfred, Samuel. But all of the ages are very close. And that's why I said it's very important to put the dates and the location with each of those dates so that you're not tripping over or coming up with the wrong information. And then, of course, sometimes you could have somebody that is, in fact, in a location at one point at the time of the census, and then back in another location. So just kind of double and triple checking. Questions, comments there?
Where did the surname Outlaw come from? I'm just curious.
So you would ask that. And I didn't put it up here because that was one of the things looking at. So there's all these lovely records that you see that the outlaws, the white outlaws, are very well documented through Mormon records, which was one of the tips that Richard had given me, like, have you checked the Mormon records? And the state of Tennessee is pretty much founded by the outlaws, like they're one of the first families. So you look at all this information and it talks about that it's possible their name originally was the McGregors, and they kind of upset the King of Scotland and became the outlaws when they moved to America. That's what we're told as far as reading some of this information. But then I had a woman reach out to me from North Carolina, and she let me know that now we're talking about my side of the family, that with the outlaws, that after the Civil War, many of them moved to Liberia and they changed their name from outlaw to outland, but it's the same family. So again, just trying to figure out and trace the changes in the name. Anyone else? So I have at the bottom here, it says, for this particular Sam Outlaw, on the census records, he's tied then to this person named George Outlaw in Bertie County, North Carolina, who was a slaveholder. Okay, so what does that record look like? Have fun with trying to find people when you don't have the dignity of even being able to use your name. So we have here George Outlaw, number of enslaved people, 18, just says female, age, male, age. But then, wait, his son also has some slaves. And if you look at the other family members, they do too. And usually their slaves are my family divided up and migrating now to other parts of the country. So everywhere we find their families, that's how we have to look to try and trace ours, because the records just are not there. You guys are awfully quiet. And I'm gonna just leave that on the screen for just a moment. This is what we look at. This is what we work with. So how do you then navigate through this? Go ahead, Tina.
Is there another way, so I know, you can look on the slave schedules, is there another way also? If you're tracing the family that owned or enslaved your family, are there other documents that would be available that you could possibly look at to see if, like, when you talk about like the families being split up,
Right.
how would that have been done?
Well, and part of that is where I come back to this group where I was saying conversation versus presentation. Because I'm looking for tips as well for how to do this. There's, in recent years, there's been some additional documents that have been made available that include through the Freedmen's Bureau that they have with those slave schedules. It's there, but it's, for me, I don't know about anyone else, it's not the easiest thing to navigate. Has anybody tried? I really don't. And your experience with it?
Frustrating because it's not indexed in any way that you can search. You have to scroll through all the pages and hope you find something.
So there are probably literally like hundreds, if not thousands of interns across the country that have been tasked with, hey, you work on this because it's extremely difficult. So the records are there, but it's difficult to navigate through them. Yes.
What about wills?
So that's one of the things that I have no, that's excellent, but thank you for that. Because then, this is just, you can't see it really well, but this was the will then for Edward Outlaw. And Edward Outlaw talks then, you know, some of the wording, of course, is somewhat graphic. But he talks about, you know, the distribution of people. Because it's property. So having to do a lot of reading of wills to see where people may have ended up or with whom they had ended up with. Nisi, do you look at wills? And what's your experience with that?
It's hard to get, like, a lot of people.
Okay, go ahead, Becky.
Deed books,
Deed books?
you can find here, especially here in York and Lancaster County, where I've been researching recently. We have found records in deeds where some people were granted their freedom. Orphans Court might mention something. Supposedly at one time, there was a registry in York County where because in one of the wills or the administrative accounts talked about going to York to register the slaves that the family owned. But it's been lost, so there's no way to track it unless you find odd pieces of information in the administrative accounts and the wills and the deeds.
So where do you go for the deed book? So we do have some people that are watching through Zoom, as well as for the folks here. Where would you generally go to find a deed book in your county, not just York?
You can go to the York County Archives, or you can go online. And I forget what it's called, search IQS, and it comes up, you can pick Pennsylvania and go into York County.
And I think part of the challenge is like state by state as to whether or not the information is available, such as the deed book. Not all of it is digitized, so in some places you have to physically go there. But there are more efforts to try and get those things available online. Hang on one moment, ma'am, Richard.
I think what she was talking about in the 1780s, Pennsylvania, along with a lot of the other northern states, passed acts for the gradual emancipation of slaves. It wasn't something that happened like that. And they were supposed to register on the county level. I do believe York County's register is lost, or no one knows where that is. However, I know Chester County, just to the east of us, theirs does exist, and it has pretty detailed, I mean, it has like the name of the slave and the age and all that kind of stuff.
But overall, there's inconsistency in being able
Correct.
to access the records, not just locally, not just in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, but all across the country. So if you're talking about, you know, my mother's side of the family migrating from North Carolina, my father's side of the family coming up from Bamberg, other parts of the family ending up in Tennessee. Oh, by the way, we have some folks in Westminster, Maryland. And each one of those states has a different process for how they do that. Okay, I'm smiling because this beautiful woman who is in the room, I just met her a few weeks ago. Yes, I'm talking about you. So through Ancestry, when I first started, I said, you know, there are different ways, whether you're looking at records or if you're looking at, you know, DNA and being able to connect with some folks. And so we recently found that we have some new cousins that have been in New York, Pennsylvania now for a year by way of Baltimore, but coming from Bertie County, North Carolina. Do you mind standing for me, please? My new cousin, who, oh no, she has a gift, who says, you know, and she's telling me the story. She allowed me to record her story. And she told me that her parents were sharecroppers. Well, with my grandparents, they were sharecroppers too. And they decided to leave and come north. But she shows me her arm and says, at age 5, I had to work in the cotton fields. And she has the scars. Migrated now to York, Pennsylvania, and through DNA has found, you have a lot of family here, don't you? You know what, you're sitting in a row with one more cousin there at the very end. Thank you for coming. So, and I'll see you afterwards, but thank you. But that's, you know, just the difficulty in trying to do this. I know that for my family, we didn't come straight from North Carolina to York, Pennsylvania. We were in Baltimore for a while, and Baltimore's not that far away. So like my mother's generation and her parents, like they know the Baltimore cousins, but we don't, like my generation and after. And this is why it's so important to try and make these ties. We have a significant amount of family that also then ended up in Philadelphia as well. You know, so when we're doing this research, it's like I said, you have so many different notepads and things on that line because you're just trying to, oh, this person had, you know, 4 siblings. Well, where did the 4 siblings end up? And what about their children and their kids' kids? And it just keeps going. The value of family reunions that include stories would be really helpful. We don't know the stories. So I guess about 2 years ago, Dr. Arwin Smallwood from North Carolina A&T came here to York, Pennsylvania. He's been tracking the migration of families out of Indian Woods, North Carolina. So Tina, who's in the front row here, as a gift a few years ago, she gives me this book about Bertie County, North Carolina. And I'm like, whoa, and it says Smallwood. So I reach out to this gentleman and we've been talking ever since. But in his book, the arrows come right through York. He had it right for the paths of migration. He just didn't know that people stopped here and stayed. And a lot of that had to do with the railway, working on the railroad. So everywhere along the railroad, that's where we're finding family. Another big piece of what we're doing, Demita's here, she's with Fawn AME down in the southern part of the county as far as Fawn AME Church and Cemetery and helping out there. Well, in Lebanon Cemetery, I have 6 generations of family, but my next 2 generations back are at Fawn. And then on the other side, I mentioned Ellsworth Cemetery. So we are literally tracking the migration of families through cemetery records, connecting those through cemetery records. And then Tina and Jenny with our team on Ancestry, they're doing a lot of just trying to help us put this information together. Eden Cemetery in Philadelphia, as well as Dauphin County, Lancaster, Chester, on across. That's how we're finding families, documenting through cemetery records. Questions? I think, ma'am, did you have something?
I was just gonna mention that you can search the deed records in the Recorder of Deeds office. And they go back to 1749. And I don't think they're online.
Right.
They
So-
are-
They
They
are.
are.
So the local, so the suggestion again was checking with the Recorder of Deeds. So wherever you're at, if the information is not available in time online, then we want to try and free up your schedule to go and see those physical records. This, when I say about tell their story, when Dr. Smallwood was here and I reached out to some of my mother's siblings who were born down in Bertie and just asking them like, hey, like what's in your photo albums, what do you have? And my uncle said, oh, I don't have much. And then he shows up with just a few things, including pictures and articles for Aunt Ida. And, you know, just going on and reading where she was featured, I believe in Allander, I mentioned about Allander. But, you know, everybody just referred to her as Aunt Ida, and this was one of our family members. So getting those scrapbooks and then documenting any names that are there. We get a lot of information from obituaries. Obituaries can be a little bit funny in that it all depends on who's writing it, of course. I know with my great-grandmother, my dad's grandmother, this is somebody that's from Bamberg. And there are 3 individuals in the family that sometimes they're listed as half siblings and other times they're listed as step siblings, depending on which obituary you're looking at. Another part of being able to tell their stories, this comes back to the outlaws. There is an initiative that's going on right now, which is the Chesapeake Mapping program, and they're looking at Virginia, Maryland, Pennsylvania, and now Delaware. And so I was saying to those folks, because down in Virginia, their top project is the Samuel D. Outlaw Museum. And so I had to say to them, hey, that's my family, and oh, by the way, his sister was a business owner here in York, Pennsylvania. And oh, by the way, he has a brother that's a business owner out in Philadelphia, and, you know, and going through and making those ties that way. So we have a brother and sister from Maryhill, North Carolina, who settled in 2 different states, Virginia and Pennsylvania, where they were business owners. Both were very active in their church community and supported the education of Black children. Serena P. Outlaw Smallwood was my great-grandmother. She is one of many accomplished members of York's Black community who are interred at Lebanon Cemetery in North York. And then there's this Blacksmith Museum in Virginia. That is the original shop of her brother, Samuel D. Outlaw. And so at the bottom, closest to me, that was then Governor, was visiting at the Outlaw Museum and saying, you know, I grew up here. He serviced and helped my family. What a great gentleman he was. And then for hours, we had the then Lieutenant Governor and Second Lady at the time, Fetterman, that visited our cemetery. So it was just showing that correlation between the 2. Up next, the value of an address. I mentioned that oftentimes, and you guys did see, for anyone that was Black, we didn't always have the luxury of having our name utilized. And so I started doing my research based on addresses. And just for fun, for the family here, these are all my mother's siblings. Yes, it's a large family. And I just put in 204 Pattison Street and found all these tiny little clippings and tidbits about the family. Like, these are the things that you can put together, you know, for any type of, you know, maybe booklets or something that you want to do for your family to be able to hand down. And so, you know, the oldest brother, his lovely acting skills and the razzle dazzle man, but he was a coordinator over at the now Bonnie Grimes, but it was the College Avenue gym. I think the one that kind of kicked me a little bit was my Uncle Gene, because I was being smart here. It says that he was a member of the 82nd Airborne. We've never talked about that. At least my generation did. And then I put They even trusted him to train new recruits. Because in the little article up there, it says he was going back to train recruits. And if you know anything about my Uncle Gene, that's funny, that he was training folks. And so I put that there. The next morning I wake up and he's on Facebook and he says, yes, and this is my most famous recruit. And it was a picture of him with Colin Powell. We don't talk about those things as a family. And then, you know, my Uncle Joe is listed here and it talked about some of the family members maybe going or enlisting along with a cousin. And it's just seeing their story and building that out, all from researching the address, not the name. Because generally, the address is going to be in the newspaper correctly, but names of people change. So I will do common addresses. So with that, we come back to discussion. It's a lot to try and do in under an hour. But just looking here, so this is the, you know, looking for those tips, and I know you all have kind of given some of that information as far as, you know, what resources do you use for your research? What type of challenges are you encountering? And then what techniques have you found to be successful when doing the research? So I'm going to open that up for discussion. And then we can do like school and I can call on you. Anyone?
Well,
Go ahead. Go ahead, sir.
I was gonna say, well, I think one of the most important things to keep in mind is what you said earlier. Sources and methods vary from locality to locality. And you really have to know your local area, because I've done research in Maryland, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and it's different in each state, and many times it's different in each county. And in Virginia, for example, they have counties and they have independent cities. So you have to keep in mind that even though a city's in a county, it has its own government and own records. And so I would always try to remind people, just because something is a certain way in one area, it's not so going to be the same in another area. And you have to get to know the local area and its records and sources and so forth.
And I think also part of that is knowing the years for when they became incorporated. So was Adams County, in that particular year, is it listed as York County? Same thing down in Maryland, where Carroll County was part of Frederick, I believe, and, you know, so you got to look at which years you're talking about. So if you're trying to find people, if I'm looking for my now Carroll County family in a year prior to it becoming Carroll County, I'm not going to find it using Carroll County. So that, again, there's a lot of variables that come in there. Is there someone else? Yes.
One of the things I'm finding now, because I'm doing a lot of 20th century on my husband's family that I wrote the book on, and I want to get it finished, and that will never finish, but get it done. Newspapers.com is absolutely fabulous for that. They published everything, it seems like, and the one thing I found is the local women who wrote about what was going on in like East Prospect or New Freedom or whatever. And you can find obituaries in that, and you can find so much more information in general about the people. So newspapers.com is really great for research.
And that's pretty much what I said about like with the storytelling piece of it, or managing the expectations of what you're looking to get out of it. So if you're looking for the stories, I'm definitely hitting newspapers.com for, you know, a lot more of that. One moment, sir. Go ahead, please.
We do a lot of our research on newspapers.com, but one thing that we found is that a lot of the Black newspapers are not in there. So there was a plethora of Black published newspapers that told more in-depth stories of the African Americans. I know Becky gave me a hint because, like for instance, Baltimore Library has, you know, you have to have a membership for that, but to be able to look, they have a huge amount of those. So you would probably be looking in like the larger cities in those states and checking them with their archives, their state archives, if they would have any or their library systems to be able to find those newspapers.
I will say that I've definitely found more on York's Dr. George Bowles in Pittsburgh newspapers than I've ever found in York newspapers. So, one of the other things, coming back to terminology, and this has to do with baseball, and no, I know nothing about baseball. I was helping some folks out in Elyria, Ohio with their research, and here we do Negro Baseball League. It took a while to figure out there, the search term was the color of knives. So, yeah, same sport, different term. But
I was just gonna say that the newspaper was their way of communicating with the community. So there's a lot of stuff in the newspaper. Like the 1860s, they would say, well, this family went to so-and-so, visited so-and-so who was sick. So, and those papers were like 40 pages long, full. So they were really large newspapers, is a good area.
absolutely. Unfortunately, when it comes to Black families, there's not as much that's going to be printed that way. There are some, where I said about that, the SF Lewis. The reason that my family was in the newspaper down there is because the editor was a family member, because I couldn't figure out like how are they. I thought we were really important. Honestly, I did. I was like, wow, we're in the newspaper a lot. And because the editor was a family member and he made sure that those things like, hey, you know, Uncle Sam's visiting this week and I'm gonna put that in the newspaper.
I think one of the best techniques that I have found is to have people you can bounce off of. Tina and Nisi, we have these, Tina calls me up and keeps me on the phone for hours.
We do kind of like a history mystery type of deal, like when somebody gets stuck, trying to put it out there, and would love to be able to do something like that with this group. But there are a number of stories where our stories overlap. And so, you know, one of the things that we did through the Friends of Lebanon Cemetery, working with the History Center here every year, the History Center has the Oyster Festival. And so we wanted to show how the Black community fit in with the Oyster Festival. And there's not a lot of information online, but there was some where you had maybe even just like advertisements for the Oyster Saloon and Ice Cream Parlor. That was owned by.
You didn't need.
But I think that's saying.
I know, it's,
Yeah, I didn't.
sound right. You know, that were owned by Black individuals. So I think we had maybe like 7 or 8 that we were able to bring that information together. But when you take somebody like John Reeves, who, you know, by selling those oyster sandwiches, he was able to support his family. And then, you know, in York, people know his daughter, Helen Reeves Thaxton, for her role with early education. Well, the father purchased a home for each of his children and he sold oysters. So again, making those connections of our shared experience, our shared history. So, you know, we're not trying to change history. We're just rounding out the story and being more inclusive in the process. So, you know, if you have information with your families, and we can share information with our families. One of the, I don't know how true this is, but I'm going to throw this out there anyway. I worked for the district attorney for a few years, as Richard knows, and supposedly my 2 times great grandmother was the person who delivered Stanley Reaver. That's what I'm told. So what are the odds? You know, she was a midwife. So just what are our shared stories? Where do those paths cross? And just trying to figure out, is it true? Because that's been passed down through the family pretty much since Stan was first elected as district attorney. That's all I have. Oh, you have some questions online.
Yeah, just a comment from Lisa Nelson, who just wants folks to remember to look at maiden names too, not to forget that your great great grandmother had a maiden name, and going down, don't forget to go down those lines.
We when I did my family tree, I did it straight up, forgetting that there were siblings. So like I had my grandmother, my great grandmother, my great great, like going that way, and I got a call from a woman down in Alabama, and she's like, "Hey," she's like, "Your great great grandmother's sister," and I'm like, "Huh?" Like, oh yeah, I forgot that part of the family. But now, we do this exercise, we did it with the team here with the History Center as well as others. You can do this with your family, you can certainly do it in community groups, church groups, but just have people first, the 4 last names of their grandparents. And then try to go back one more. The 8 names, there are 8 pillars. Who are your 8 pillars in your family? What are those 8 names? And I swear, every time I do that, I end up with a cousin. Truly, for some of this, but when you were asking about the name Shell, I was like, SCH or is it SH? Because we have Shell family members out of South Carolina, so that's why I'm asking that particular question for how that works, but just ask people if they know those 8 pillars. That means they have to know the maiden name of their grandmothers and great grandmothers, which many of us don't. Yeah. Any other questions? All right, excellent. Well, yes, Steve.
This isn't so much a question, but more of a comment that I came across in researching not just my family history, but kids' dad's side of the family history, but kissing cousins. So a lot of us, when our families were, like my mom's side of the family came up from Tennessee, North Carolina area, but when you have those families that lived out in a very remote area, who do you imagine that they saw every day, possibly on a daily basis? Their first cousins who lived down the street or whatever. So, you know, some people find it crazy that first cousins may have married back then or, you know, got involved, but you got to look at their environment that they were living around, because I know when I'm doing, and I still just do this, but when I'm looking, I'll be like, why does that name sound so familiar? And I'm like, oh, it's because he's over here in the tree too. And then I have to have Ancestry merge those people, even though, you know, they're only like a line above and down from each other. But at first I was like, I don't understand that, but someone explained it to me and said, well, you know, you were always surrounded by your family. That's who you were gonna see the most, especially if you weren't living in a city situation. So don't be shocked when you see it. Just try to connect it if you can, and if nobody knows about the merge feature on ancestry.com, it's very helpful. When you look up a person's, when you have their profile up, it'll say, when you're doing edits, it'll say merge with a duplicate. And then you'll find that person's name elsewhere in your tree. And then you will hit merge, it'll compare the information, but it will merge them then into one person so that you won't have that person like 3-4 times showing up in the tree.
When just kind of piggybacking off of that, you know, we tend to do things nowadays according to standards in 2024. And when Dr. Smallwood was here and we were just talking about cultural traditions and customs and things. So in North Carolina, Tuscarora tribe. So he was talking about some of those customs and he was like, hey, husband died, we married the brother, we kept the family intact. You know, nowadays we're like, oh my God, how did you marry the brother? That's what you did, period. And so again, we have to have some grace that our standards, we want to call them that, and it's 2024 may conflict with some of what we're seeing on paper. And I wish I had the quote here, but I had pulled something a few weeks ago where it was basically talking about, as far as with our Black families, that was in fact, you know, probably the biggest example of community raising families. Because as families were torn apart, other people took in individuals. And so when I say about managing expectations, part of that, I know, you know, we bring up Native American quite a bit, and then people are doing their DNA and they're like, wait, I don't have any Indian blood in me. And yet they were raised with the tribe. So what exactly are you trying to get to when you're building out your story? And don't forget that there were a number of things going on, as well as for, you know, could be Richard's family. You're talking about war-torn countries. So somebody may have come to America by way of Germany, but were they in Ireland first? So what does that look like and what does that mean? So All right, well, thank you very much. I appreciate your attention today.
Thank you.
I'm on that. Uh-oh. Come on now. And you're gonna introduce yourself. This is so beautiful. Well, not-
We didn't plan.
Oh, wow. I wasn't saying. Sorry, I wanted to go on the microphone, so I want you to introduce yourself and where you're from, please. Come on. Just introduce yourself.
My name is Janet Healer Bond Rasco Smallwood Saunders. And this is my precious daughter, Janisa Claude.
Okay,
Well,
but we had a chance to meet a few weeks ago. So if you don't mind telling these folks, what did that mean to you to find that you have family here in York?
it was awesome.
Awesome.
Awesome. It's been beautiful. Really has been beautiful. We've been enjoying every bit of it.
And that's all through DNA?
Through DNA.
Through DNA.
And it's amazing to find out we have so much in common. We've never met each other before, but it's like we have so much.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies.
Oh,
Appreciate it.
now,
Uh-oh.
you
I don't have to share it, right?
you don't have to.
Okay. I thought I saw a picture in there. Is there a picture? I'm the picture person, like I wanted.
I'm the product of the sharecroppers, and it goes back to 1860. All right, and my father was born on this farm in 1907. His mother was born on this farm in 1800s. And my father is the 6th generation of this sharecropper. Show you a picture of the ones that we sharecropped with. Right? Can you see that? Now, this person, his grandfather was the master, and it's 5 generations from them. And he's about maybe 78. This picture was taken 2021. Now, he is, I said, 5th generation. And these are my brothers. They were the ones on this farm. There were 12 of us in the family, 8 boys and 4 girls. And my father sharecropped. He was raised on this farm. His mother was raised on it first. He was raised on it. Then he got married in 1933, and they had 12 children, and all of us were raised on that same farm. Now, he didn't leave that farm until 1972. All of the children were grown, and on a sharecropper's farm, Black children don't go to school. You understand? We're not going to school. Why? Because we have to do the work. We have to do the farming. Very little of schooling that we have. But if you had parents who were interested in the education, they made sure that they home taught you. You know, you hear of homeschooling. I learned about that in 1950, 54. So my parents did the best they could to make sure that we were educated children. And from these 12 children, we were a family
the children are self-sufficient, own property. This is a plantation, Hope House. If you go to Windsor, North Carolina, Berkeley County, you can see this Hope House. And one of my brother owns some of the property on this site. So we were people under the situation, we made the best of it. What are you going to do? Where are you taking 14 people? So it was a way of survival. And I will never knock it. Why? Because I did well enough. And I'm thankful for that. So it taught me to be a hard worker. Really did. And also to respect God.
Thank you.
Okay, so now this picture and this. And this is what the master gave this family. It says, for my parents, in loving memory, Samuel and Clotilde Taylor, we recognize and honor their hard work, diligence, honesty, and kindness during our partnership for over 50 years, 1950 to 1972. 1950, so thank you, baby. 1950 to 1972. And you can go to Windsor, North Carolina right now and see this peanuts. They are still in business. More than 200 years. They're still in business. Howard and Stokes peanuts. Look it up, Highway 13.
Right, so Hope Plantation, you can take tours of Hope Plantation, so you can find that information online. So thank you.
All of this is yours, precious. And we want you to always keep as sweet as you are now. So here's a candy bar to make it sweet.
All right, we'll turn back over to you, Richard, to wrap up while I get my emotions in check. But you can see just, again, the difficulty of the research, however, the blessings that come with it. So, thank you all.
We are adjourned, but you're welcome to talk to Sam if you'd like to. I'm sure you'll
Actually, I'll put these things in the back for
Okay.
people to